All right. Hello and welcome to your Yoga Folk class, specifically focusing on the spine. This is a great class if you suffer from low back pain, mid back, or upper back, but also just a nice practice to help mobilize through the spine. It'll be a pretty gentle practice. We will get up and flow a little bit, but we'll also come into some nice restorative twists and movements to support the spine. So, all you're going to need for your practice today is a set of yoga blocks and a blanket. If you don't have a blanket, a firm pillow or something can be nice, but you're not really going to need the pillow or the blanket till the end of practice. But if you do have your yoga blocks, and if you're at home and you don't have yoga blocks, some pretty thick books could also be used, which can be nice. And we're going to actually place them towards the back of our mat. And then I'm going to have you sit facing away from the blocks when you're ready. So attached to the spine is the hip. So we're just going to start from the lower portion of the spine and work our way up. So go ahead and take your hands towards the blocks, which can just be really helpful. Take your feet a little bit wider than your mat or a little bit wider than hip distance if that feels more comfortable for you. And we're just going to find a gentle windshield wipering of the knees side to side, or like this 90-90 movement through the hips. So I like to have my hands on the blocks. As I twist to one side, I'll take that hand away and then return it. But find an organic movement that feels really good for your hips, something that allows you to push that back hip forward. And we're just going to use this really as an exploration into the hips and how that feels. You may also start to feel the low back and the pelvis, which is all interconnected. So we'll just be here for a little bit. And if it helps, you can also start to focus on your breath, maybe even matching your breath to your movement. I like to inhale as I twist and exhale through transitions, but feel free to find any breath that feels really intuitive for you and your practice. We'll just do this a couple more times. And then the next time your knees come over towards the right, go ahead and pause. Now the blocks are already there. We're going to twist towards the block. So coming into a little spinal twist, bringing one hand onto the block. And if they're a little too far away, feel free to adjust. But then once you find a twist you can stay into, start to fold forward. Keep your left hand where it is, but lengthen your right arm out long. And just notice how this rotation feels throughout the spine, specifically the low back and the hips. And again, this first bit is just a little exploration, tapping into how the body feels, how the spine feels. And let's take 2 deep breaths here in this twist. And when you're ready, bring back in that extended right arm and go ahead and start to come out of your rotation. We're going to take the knees all the way over towards the left. Slowly start to twist towards your blocks at the back of your mat. Listen to your spine, notice how that feels. And if it feels okay, start to fold towards the back of your mat, this time leaving that right hand, extending that left arm. And take a couple of deep breaths here. Just really tuning in to how this feels in your body. This gentle rotation or twisting motion through the spine. And slowly bring that extended arm back and unravel. You can set your blocks more towards the front of your mat if that's helpful. And we're actually going to come over onto hands and knees when you're ready. So coming into hands and knees, knees under hips, hands under shoulders, we're actually going to start to isolate the low back a little bit. So from here, lower onto your forearms, so your elbows are right underneath the shoulders. And if it's helpful, you can bring the hands to touch, interlace them, whatever feels supportive. But what I want you to focus on is isolating through the sacrum and the pelvis. So rather than cat-cowing the whole spine, we're going to take that motion of cat-cowing, but just through the lumbar. So before we begin, press your forearms into the floor and feel your shoulders protract or pull away from your spine. So you have that sense of rounding through the shoulders. From there, rather than keeping the neck long, let your chin just tuck to your chest and let your head hang heavy. Now from here, just let your tailbone do the movement. So pushing your tailbone up, feel your pelvis drop a little bit. So it's like that cow-like motion, but just in the lumbar region. And then tuck just the tailbone under. Extend just the tailbone. And then tuck just the tailbone under. So as you continue to move just the pelvis, sacrum, low back region, keep the shoulder blades rounded. So we're still pressing the forearms into the floor. We're soft through the neck. And finding this gentle release through the low back. And again, if it's helpful, feel free to match your movement to your breath if that's a part of your practice, or just find any kind of natural breath that feels supportive for you. And really try to keep this just in the low back, so everything from the ribs up is staying steady and still. And you're taking these nice deep breaths here. And then slowly come into neutral. From here, walk your hands underneath your shoulders. We're going to sit the hips back onto the heels. Now we're going to move up the spine now towards the mid back. So imagine you can keep your sacrum and your pelvis and your low back in place so it's not moving anymore. And just the ribs of the backside are going to round and then extend. So trying to keep your pelvis and your upper back as still as possible and just moving this segment of the middle of your back. Just trying to mobilize right around the ribs. Still in this cat-cow-like movement, rounding and extending, or spinal extension and flexion, however you would like to call it. And again, if it's helpful, match your breath or just take any breath that feels really natural. And then come back into a neutral spine. Go ahead and come back into your more traditional tabletop, hands under shoulders, knees under hips. And now we're going to do just the upper back. So pulling just the shoulder blades away from the spine, rounding the upper back. And then hugging the spine with the shoulders, keeping your arms pretty straight. So also known as scapular retractions and protractions. But just moving the upper back. So above the ribs to the tops of the shoulders. Again, finding this third segment of the spine before we get to the neck. And notice how each little segment may feel. There may be a specific part that feels a little bit more stuck or needing attention, and that can be really helpful as something we may want to come back to later and keep giving some attention. And then the next time you can come into a neutral spine. Now we're going to turn this into a cat-cow, but really slow, and let the movement originate from the tailbone. So coming into that neutral spine, slowly start to tilt your tailbone up, just like we did when we were on the forearms. Let it move towards the ribs, feel your belly distending towards the floor, eventually upper back, shoulders hugging your spine, and then eventually the neck as the chin pulls up. Now, as we round the back, we're going to do the same thing from the tailbone. So slowly start to tuck your tailbone under first. Your low back start to round, mid back start to round, upper back, and then eventually the cervical spine of the neck as you tuck your chin into your chest. Let's do that 2 more times. Tuck your tail first, tilting it back. Feel your low back broaden. Eventually the mid back, upper back, and neck. And then again, from the tailbone, tucking that under, slowly rounding up the rest of the spine until you get to the neck. One more time at your own cadence and really tuning into how it feels in your body. And then after that next one, come into a nice neutral spine. Sit your hips back onto your heels, but keep your arms nice and long. We're going to find a little rotation through the shoulder, but specifically focusing on how it moves hanging off of the spine and the ribs. So keep your left hand firmly grounded, and then extend your right arm a little bit more forward and have the thumb up, pinky down towards the floor. Now you can follow your hand with your gaze if that feels okay on your neck, or just keep the gaze down. But we're slowly just going to lift the right arm from the floor, keep pressing the left hand into the floor, open and twist through the back and through the side body, and then bring that arm back down and around towards the floor. So 3 more just like that, gentle movement through the shoulder and where it connects with the ribs and then the spine. Again, letting the gaze follow or keeping the gaze down towards the floor if it following doesn't feel good in your body. 2 more just like that. And the last one here. Bring everything back down and in. And let's switch to the other side. So firmly ground the right hand, extend your left arm a little bit more forward. And then again, slowly start to open and twist towards the left. Moving slow enough that you can notice if there's any spots that feel sticky or difficult to mobilize through. And then breathe into that space, slow down, and really try to focus on mobilizing through the spine and the shoulder. 2 more just like that. Last one here. And release. Go ahead and have a seat onto your heels. We won't be here for very long. We're going to come right into our flow. But before we start moving, pause and just take a moment and notice how everything feels. Shoulders and ribs hanging off from the spine, hips and pelvis hanging off from the spine. The natural curvature of your spine as it runs from your hips to your head. And when you're ready, as you inhale, slowly reach your arms up. Keeping a nice long spine, hinge from your hips and fold, so like you're in an extended child's pose, reaching the arms forward, sitting the hips back. From here, we're going to do a spinal wave, this time from the cervical spine to the tailbone. So tuck your chin to your chest, start to round your upper back as you pull yourself forward into tabletop. Eventually, mid-back, low back, and hips are all rounded. And then coming into that extension, take a round of cat-cow. Just rounding and extending through the spine. Now, the next time you come into a neutral spine, we're going to take the gaze over the right shoulder and hug your right hip towards your right rib cage. So you feel a bit of a contraction through the right side and an extension through the left. And we're going to come through center into our cow pose. So let the tailbone lift, chin lifts, belly sags. Come through neutral spine, take your gaze over the left shoulder, hug your left hip towards your left rib cage. Now we're going to come through center, but rounding the spine, pushing the floor away like a cat spine. Now let's go through that again. You can move that slowly, but keep looking over the right shoulder, contracting the right side, cow through the middle, looking over the left, contracting the left hip, and cat through the middle. And then we'll do this a couple more times at your own speed, but basically you're just wanting to barrel roll through the midsection of your body. So finding a little bit of a side bend, a rounding, or flexion and extension through the spine. Let's go one more here. And let the head just hang naturally however it likes to move, whatever feels really authentic for you. And the next time you come back to center, find a neutral spine, bring everything back into center. Slowly extend your right leg back behind you, keeping your spine nice and balanced. And then step your right foot to the outside of your right hand. Now, if you like, you can place your hands on your blocks or just keep the left hand on the floor as you reach your right arm up, twisting your chest to the inner right thigh, coming into a low lunge twist. And pause here and take a couple of deep breaths, maybe melting the hips towards the floor if that feels really nice. Maybe letting the right knee come past the toes if that feels good. Just exploring how this first one feels for you. Now keep your chest twisting towards the right side of your space. We're going to lift the chest, keep twisting towards the right. Reach your right hand back towards your left leg or left hip as you come into this reverse revolved low lunge. Lifting the chest, left arm reaching up towards the sky, right arm reaching back towards that left leg, twisting and back bending. Slowly bring the arms back in front of you, coming into Andale Mudra or hands to heart prayer position. Shift the chest forward a little bit. Tuck your left back toes under, lift your back knee from the floor, and then inhale up, crescent lunge. As you exhale, we're going to start to twist. So reach your left arm forward, start to open your twist towards the right, reach your right arm back. Come into this nice revolved crescent. Now we're slowly going to cartwheel the body to face the opposite long edge of our mat, pivoting that back foot so you're coming into Warrior Two. Now from Warrior Two, flip your front palm and bring it into Reverse Warrior. Now this right arm that's reaching up towards the sky, let the hand come towards the back of your head. And just like we did in tabletop, we're just going to round like a cat motion for the spine, and then extend like a cow. When you extend like a cow, let your head push back into your hand. And when you come into your cat spine, let your hand push your head forward a little bit. Notice how that feels through your spine. And then release, come back to your Reverse Warrior. Slowly open back up, Warrior Two, extending the arms, heel to arch alignment. Cartwheel this back hand, left hand towards the floor inside the framing of the right foot, and then find a big lunge twist, reaching the right arm towards the sky, opening your chest to your inner right thigh. Then slowly lower your left knee down, lower your right hand towards the floor, sweep your right leg back behind you, and then lower your right knee towards the floor. Once you come back into your tabletop, let's do that barrel roll of the spine again, but this time leading towards the left. So coming into your cow-like spine, and then gaze over the left shoulder first this time, hugging your left hip to your left ribs, rounding as you come through the middle, looking over the right. Coming back down towards your more cow-like spine, over towards the left, rounding through the middle, and then over to the right. One more time at a cadence that feels really supportive for you. And once you come back through center, find a nice neutral spine. Once again, have a seat back onto your heels. Take a moment, check in, notice how your spine feels. Notice if there's any tension you can't soften. And when you're ready, let's do that flow on the other side. As you inhale, reach the arms up overhead. As you exhale, brace through your core, hinge from your hips, keep your low back nice and neutral, come into that extended child's pose. Again, we're going to spinal way forward, starting from the cervical spine. So tuck the chin to the chest as you pull yourself into your tabletop around the upper back, mid back, lower back. So you're in this big cat once you land, and then take 2 rounds of cat-cow. Just traditional spinal extension and spinal flexion. And after you finish your cat-like spine, come back into that neutral position. Slowly extend your left leg back behind you. Try to keep your pelvis and your low back nice and centered and neutral. And then step your left foot to the outside of your left hand. Keep your right hand grounded. Maybe even bring it onto a block if that feels more helpful, and start to twist your chest open towards that left inner thigh, reaching your left arm up towards the sky. Pausing just for a moment in this twist, maybe you play around with falling in towards the hips, letting the knee come past the toes, whatever feels really helpful for you. When you're ready, keep the twist. Slowly start to lift your chest, reaching this left hand towards your right leg or your right hip or your right low back or anywhere that feels accessible, and reaching your right arm up towards the sky. So you're like in this reverse revolved low lunge. Notice how this back bend feels throughout the spine, how the hips feel in this extension. And then slowly bring your hands Anjali Mudra towards your heart. Tuck your right toe under, lean your chest slightly forward, pick your right knee up off the floor. When you're ready, lift your chest, inhale your arms up, crescent lunge. Take a breath here to land. Now we're going to come into that twist. So we're slowly going to start to twist the chest towards the left side of our room. Reach your right arm forward, reach your left arm back. Hug your inner thighs together. And then cartwheel open into your warrior two. Heel to arch alignment. When you're ready, flip your front palm, reverse warrior. Now this top arm up towards the sky, let it come to the back of your head. And again, we're going to find that cat-cowing of the spine. So letting the chin drop, rounding the spine, and then extending the spine. Noticing how that feels along the way. And then come into your neutral spine, extend that arm again so you're back into your reverse warrior. Come through warrior two. We're going to take this right hand all the way to the floor, to the inside of the left foot, picking up the right heel as you do so, and coming into your easy twist lunge. Take a deep breath here. Slowly release your left hand towards the floor, lower your right knee down, sweep your left leg to the back of your space. Lower your left knee towards the floor. Take 2 rounds of cat-cow once you come back to your tabletop position. Now that spinal wave that we did earlier, I'm going to show you a variation from child up to cobra, and then if it feels okay, we're going to take it down dog to plank. So go ahead and push back into your extended child's pose position. Tuck your chin to your chest. We're slowly going to round the spine to come forward. At the top, letting the hips melt, pulling the chin away from the chest. And then reverse that. So we're slowly going to push ourselves back into that extended child. So let's do that one more time. And then if you feel comfortable, I invite you to stay exactly as you are, moving extended child to cobra with a spinal wave. Or if you would like, for option number 2, once you come back to your extended childs, tuck your toes under. Start to pick up your knees and eventually lift the hips, straighten the legs, downward facing dog. And we'll do that same thing. So if you decided to stay where you were, same thing, spinal wave forward and back. Or if you're in down dog, we'll spinal wave forward to plank. Then bend the knees, push the hips back. Once the arms are straight, downward facing dog. Again, rounding, coming forward into plank. Bending the knees, pushing the hips back. Once the hips are all the way back, arms are nice and long, spine is long, down dog. Wherever you are, let's flow that 2 more times. And release. Wherever you are, let's meet in downward facing dog together. Take a deep breath here. On your next in-breath, sweep your right leg up towards the sky, three-legged dog. And then as you exhale, step it to the outside of your right hand. Lower your left knee towards the floor, untuck your left toe, and lift your chest. You're going to bring your fingertips loosely behind the head, and we're going to use the right elbow to make circles. So imagine circling your right elbow all the way forward and down inside your right knee, and then circling it all the way up, back, and open like you're reaching it towards your back left foot. So you're using that elbow to draw big circles coming forward, and a big circle to come back and around. Let's go through that 2 more times. Notice how that feels through your spine, through your shoulders. And release, come towards the inside of the knee, pause for just a breath. And release your hands to the floor. Tuck your back left toe under, pick up that knee, step your right leg back, downward facing dog. Take a breath here. On your next in-breath, sweep your left leg up, three-legged dog. As you exhale, draw the leg forward, step the left foot to the outside of your left hand. Lower your right knee towards the floor. Inhale, lift the chest up. Again, fingertips behind the head. This time the left elbow draws circles, slowly coming forward to the inside of the left knee. Use your left elbow to draw you up and back, like your left elbow is reaching towards your right foot. Left elbow draws the circle forward. Left elbow draws the circle back. So notice too what's happening here as you move. You've got the spinal extension and flexion, shoulder retraction and protraction, pelvis tilting forward and back. So much happening throughout everything that connects through the spine. And take one more time here. And the next time that left elbow is towards the inside of the knee, pause. Release your hands to the floor. This time we're going to step forward. So tuck your right toe under, pick up your right knee, step your right foot to the top of your mat, coming into your standing forward fold. Pause for a moment here. Maybe even hooking hands into elbows, staying still, maybe swaying side to side. Whatever feels really inviting for you in this moment. And a lot of times in forward folds, we notice the hamstring or the posterior chain releasing. But I invite you to focus on the low back and the spine. So rather than focusing on the hamstrings, maybe we bend the knees a lot and we find length through the spine instead. And take a couple of deep breaths here. And we're going to ragdoll, so decompressing the spine on the way up. So if you hooked elbows, go ahead and release. Let your head be really heavy. Bend your knees generously. Now imagine just stacking one vertebra at a time, nice and slow. So just like we did in our tabletop earlier, tuck your tailbone under first. Stack one vertebra on top of the next as you slowly come up to stand at the top of your mat. Once you've made it all the way to the top, take a breath. And when you're ready, inhale, reach your arms overhead. You're going to use your right hand to grab your left wrist. Come into a side bend over towards the right. Now we're going to play around with the cat-cow here. So imagine reaching your left hand towards the right corner of your space, rounding the spine. And then reaching your left hand towards the back right corner of your mat as you extend through your spine, pushing the hips slightly forward. So round and reach towards the front corner. Extend and reach towards the back corner. 2 more times. And the next time you reach forward towards the front corner, you have a rounded spine. Fold forward at that diagonal. Let your left hand come to the floor in front of your right foot. If it doesn't make contact, that's where it can be really helpful to grab a block. Bend your right knee generously and twist open towards the right, reaching your right hand up towards the sky. Now, again, depending on how this feels on the cervical spine, you can keep your gaze down, you can look straight out towards the side, or you can look up towards the hand. Take a deep breath. Slowly release your right hand back towards the floor, straighten both legs. Again, ragdoll yourself up to stand, nice and slow. Once you've made it towards the top, take a breath. And when you're ready, inhale, reach the arms overhead. This time, use your left hand to grab your right wrist. Gently side bend over towards the left. Again, we'll find that rounding and flexion of the spine. So round and reach towards the front left corner with your right hand. And then extend and reach the back left corner of your space or your mat. Flow through that 3 more times. And then the next time you come forward, you have that rounded spine. Fold at the diagonal. Let your right hand come to the floor in front of your left foot. Bend your right knee and start to twist open towards the left. Again, if the hand doesn't feel comfortable on the floor, you can always grab a block or anything that will bring the earth to you to support you in your practice. Slowly release your left hand down towards the floor. Straighten both legs. Slide your hands up your shins. Come into a nice flat back, halfway up. And then round your spine and fold. Place your hands onto the floor and step back into a high plank. And then lower all the way onto your belly with control. Once you're onto your belly, go ahead and take your hands a little bit forward and a little bit wider than shoulder distance. You can be on fingertips or flat hands, whatever feels better. We're going to do that spinal wave again. So as you lift up, tuck your chin to your chest, lifting the upper body up. And then slowly unravel as you come back down. And let's do this 3 times, spinal waving through the entire upper body. And the next time you come back onto your belly, pause and stay. Bring your arms out like cactus, come onto one cheek, and just take a breath here. Now from here, go ahead and extend your left arm overhead. Bring your right hand next to your right chest. We're going to roll all the way onto the left side body. You're going to bring your left knee out and then stack your right knee on top. And then open your right arm behind you. I'm running into my wall, so I have to scoot forward a little bit. And open into a spinal twist. Now, if the legs don't feel supported or feels like too much on the low back, you can grab one of your blocks, which can be really helpful to place between the knees or on the outside of the bottom left knee or whatever feels the most supportive for you. And we'll take 5 deep breaths here once we land. And then if you added a block, slowly remove that. Bring your right hand back in front of your chest. We're going to use that to press ourselves up. And before we go into our twist on the other side, we're going to do a little bit more spinal work. So taking your block, we're going to place it right underneath the shoulder blades. Now this can be set either on its mid setting or its low setting. It really depends on how flexible you feel through your spine and your chest. I like it on the low setting, but feel free to place yours on the middle setting. As you start to lower down, you really want to make sure the block is right underneath your shoulder blades. From there, we're going to bring the hands behind the head, wrap your elbows forward. And we're just going to come back into that extension and flexion, so letting the head fall. And then like you're doing like an athletic crunch, coming forward. Melting into it. And again, moving slow enough, you can really feel that through the spine, through the shoulders. Probably even a little bit through the front body as you come into that extension. Maybe slowing down the breath, noticing how that feels for you. And let's take 2 more rounds here. And then the next time you lower into that extension, pause. And just let everything hang. You can take your arms out towards the side or leave them overhead or however feels best for you. And just stay in this supported extension. Take 3 deep breaths here. And then bring the hands back behind the head to support you and use the arms to come up. Go ahead and place the arms onto the floor to come off your block. You can bring it with you, but we're going to come into that spinal twist on the left this time. So coming to lay on your left side, right arm will be overhead, and then extend your left arm out towards the side, opening into that spinal twist. Now again, you can have the block underneath the outside leg or between the legs or whatever feels supported, or no props at all. And then slowly bring the arms in first. Remove your block and come back to sit laying on your back with your knees bent. Before we come into our final shape, we're going to finish with a supported bridge. So keeping your block in hand, go ahead and press to the feet to pick your hips up off the floor, and the block can be on its low or its mid setting, and slide that right underneath your sacrum and your pelvis, and then allow the hips to rest onto the block. Now from here, I'm going to invite you to step your feet out a little bit further away than they are now, closer towards the foot of your mat. And just take a couple of deep breaths. And then slowly walk your feet back in. Press through the feet. Now, before we come off, slightly tilt your pelvis forward so it feels like your low back is broadening. And then lift your hips to remove your block. Lower yourself all the way down one vertebra at a time. And then gently windshield wiper the knees side to side. And we're going to finish with a nice support. It can be a nice chest opener as well, which can be really nice, but we're going to support the erectors or the muscles that run along the spine from the hips to the neck. So for this, you can either use a really big pillow, or one of my favorites is to take a blanket and we're going to roll it up like a burrito. So you want it to at least be as long as your spine, maybe even as long as from your sacrum to your head, and then just roll it up like you're making like a pool foam noodle. And then place that if you were to lay down so it would be supportive through the spine. And once you have that, you can either pull it right up against your tailbone, or you can even place your sacrum and your hips on it if that feels more supportive for your low back. But once you have it where you like it for your practice, go ahead and lay down so it's running right with your spine. Now, if you have extra blanket above you, this can be really nice to fold under the head, and that can be a really nice release for the cervical spine as it gives you a supported tucking of the chin as well. And your arms can be however's comfortable. This is where we're going to finish our practice today. And what I want you to focus on here is this tactile connection of the blanket and your spine. Notice the nourishment when the spine has the support. Taking a moment to think over your practice and how it felt to move and open and twist the spine in all of its directions. And as you breathe, I invite you to breathe as if you're breathing your spine into the touch with the blanket or the pillow or whatever you're using. Now, if you have time to linger here today, I invite you to stay in this variation of Shavasana for as long as you like. But if it's time to move on with your day, I invite you to just gently roll on to either side of your body, whatever side feels the most intuitive for you and your practice today. And rather than just laying on your side passively, I invite you to bring your knees more in towards your chest so you can almost feel like your low back is rounding. And then gently, when you're ready, press yourself up. Take a moment sitting, maybe rolling the shoulders or whatever might feel really nice, and notice how everything around the spine feels. Hopefully nourished, hydrated, mobile. I invite you to bring your hands to your hearts. And I want to thank you for sharing your practice with me today, nourishing and caring for our spine and the longevity of it. I appreciate your practice from my heart to yours. Be well.